Hey everybody, we are live in the back green room for DisrupTV. More importantly, we've got some interesting guests, like we always do. So we're going to introduce everybody in reverse order of appearance. And of course, they're going to tell us where they're coming in from and what are they talking about today in very, very short form. Sabina, tell us what's coming in. And of course, you got a new book. So.
Thank you. I'm joining you today from Vancouver, Ray. And yes, I have a new book, You're the Boss, published by Simon & Schuster just last week. Looking forward to discussing some key themes from there. Thank you.
Presses. It doesn't get better than that. So. Owen, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit where you're coming in from. What are we talking about today?
We are coming in from beautiful Washington, D.C. via Arlington, Virginia. And I'm here to talk about quality information and how it is better to build trust from the bottom up than the top down.
Got it. Lev, where are you coming in from? What are we talking about?
Hey, Ray. Lev Gonick here in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona. I'm at Arizona State University, and we'll be chatting today about leadership, especially at this moment in time.
All right. And Dr. David Bray, where are you coming in from?
Coming to you live from the blast radius of Washington, D.C. And if I can bring together what everybody said, I'm interested about how do we lead in turbulent environments? And again, how do we do so from the bottoms up?
Very, very cool. Well, I'm here with my awesome co-host, Vala Afshar, and of course, our producer, Al. And more importantly, we're about to start the show. So go for the count. All yours.
All right. 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us on DisrupTV. My name is Vala Afshar. I'm the Chief Evangelist at Salesforce and your co-host for the next hour. We welcome you to follow us on X at DisrupTV Show. It's my pleasure to introduce my co-host, Ray Wang. He's the CEO and founder of Constellation Research. He's the best-selling author of Everybody Wants to Rule the World. Ray is a regular television news contributor on Fox Business, Bloomberg, CNBC. I see him on TV every week. And he's a highly influential and trusted futurist on X at RWANG0. Welcome, Ray Wang, to DisrupTV.
Hey, thanks a lot. I'm with Vala Afshar, the Chief Digital Evangelist at Salesforce. He's also the author of multiple books, including Boundless, A New Mindset for Unlimited Business Success, and a number one seller on Amazon. Executives around the world pay attention to every one of his inspirational, insightful tweets. He's got almost 1 million followers, and when he's not hosting and keynoting or leading events at Salesforce, you can find him on business TV outlets such as Bloomberg and posting insightful analyses from this show and other areas on ZDNet. So, but it's not about us. This time we've got a cadre of interesting folks. So we'll talk more about that later. So who do we have to kick off the show today?
We have this panel format with 3 amazing guests. Lev Gonick is CIO of Arizona State University. Ellen McCarthy, CEO and founder of Trusted Media Cooperative. And Dr. David Bray, Distinguished Fellow at Stimson Center and Business Executive for National Security. Please allow me to introduce all 3 before we begin. Ellen McCarthy was appointed by President Trump to be the Assistant Secretary of State for the Bureau of Intelligence and Research in 2019. Ellen has had 25-year plus illustrious career. She must have started when she was 8 in intelligence community, serving as Chief Operating Officer of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. Ellen also served as the President of the Intelligence and National Security Alliance, which supports government policies and programs related to cybersecurity, counterintelligence, acquisitions, and homeland security. Well, your bio is incredibly long. We only have an hour. Welcome, Ellen, to Disrupt TV.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Thank you so much. All of you have incredible bios, and I'm not doing it justice. I apologize. Lev Gonick is an educator, technologist, smart city architect. He's been teaching, working, and living in the net for more than 25 years. Lev is the Enterprise Chief Information Officer at Arizona State University. He's been recognized by Orbi Awards as Arizona's top enterprise CIO. EdScoop named Lev as a top 50 educational technology influencer. Inside Business Magazine named Lev one of the most powerful CIOs in government technology award. Lev was named their top 25 doers, dreamers, and drivers. List of awards and recognition throughout his career. Computer World, CIO Magazine, all major publications have named him as a visionary and a difference maker. I love CIOs who are visionaries and difference makers. Thank you, Lev, for joining us on Disrupt TV.
Great to be here.
And of course, last but not least, Dr. David Bray, Distinguished Fellow and Chair of the Accelerative with the Alfred Lee Loomis Innovation Council and nonpartisan Henry L. Stimson Center. David is principal at Lead Do Adapt Ventures, also served executive director for the People-Centered Internet, who's co-chaired with inventor of the internet, inventor of TCP/IP, to be, for all of us who kind of know and geek out on technology, exactly. TCP/IP. Business Insider named Dr. Bray as one of the top 24 Americans who are changing the world under 40, and he's been named Young Global Leader by the World Economic Forum. He's perhaps the most frequent visitor, and in fact, I think episode number 4, we're close to 400 episodes now in Disrupt TV. So he would earn a jacket and First Ballot Hall of Fame to Disrupt TV if he had one. Welcome back, David, to Disrupt TV.
Oh, great to be here with you, Vala and Ray. And maybe because Ellen and I come from intelligence and military backgrounds, we could also work on getting you a coin, and we can explain to you what coins are. So.
What an honor. Let's do that. That's fantastic.
No, that is awesome. All right. Well, let's start with Lev, and we're going to talk about what's going on. You know, you have been doing amazing work. When we think of you as an educator, a smart city architect, a technologist, a visionary, and more importantly, you're doing some crazy work in terms of what's going on with ASU. So talk about the future of effective education, thinking about new approaches to learning, novel technologies, but more importantly, some of the stats for success, because ASU has been posting some amazing accomplishments.
Yeah, thanks again for having me. And just to kind of start by offering some sort of insights on the numbers. We've been recognized by our peers and really in the public eye as the #1 university for innovation in the country for actually 10 years in a row by U.S. News and World Report. We're #1 in the U.S., #2 in the world for sustainability. Noting again that I'm here in Phoenix, Arizona. That's in and of itself a huge piece. And we're also #1 in the United States for global impact. Again, recognized for not just our innovation agenda. Maybe I'll just share very quickly 3 kinds of what I think are transformational initiatives made possible by technology. One, a technology that kind of emerged 25 years ago and is now maturing. One that is just happening now and we think will actually position us for the next decade or more. 14 years ago, there was no online learning environment. At ASU, during the downturn in 2008, we hit an existential moment. The bottom was falling out. The political headwinds were complicated. The economic challenges were enormous. Sounds a little familiar.
Very much.
And at that moment in time, ASU decided in a very, very ASU way, led by President Michael Crow, to do something completely different than most of our peers. Rather than figuring out how we were going to survive the downturn, we positioned ourselves in what we think of as an anti-fragile approach, using Nassim Taleb's book on the same topic, Anti-Fragile. And how do we actually not only get through this downturn, but actually be better at the other end of it? And so we actually created ASU Online. 400 students in that first, we're just talking about 12 years ago. Today, fast forward, we have 104,000 students enrolled in almost 400 programs, designed, delivered, and evaluated by our faculty, and growing double-digit percentage year over year. That was a kind of strategic design insight. then when one faces turbulent times, an interesting opportunity to shift. And if I can just quickly share the second piece, during COVID, another moment in time where the bottom fell out and the world looked like for some it was going to come to an end and people wanted to debate all kinds of things. ASU decided that this was, again, another really important moment for us to take a step function leap in the way we were delivering education. And so we partnered right in the middle of COVID with Steven Spielberg and Walter Parks, who had created a commercial product called Dreamscape Immersive, which was supposed to be a consumer experience in sort of TV inside cinemas, inside theaters, which of course the bottom fell out there because nobody was going to the cinema during COVID. And we created together a Dreamscape Learn, an opportunity to create fully immersive, discovery-based, experiential learning opportunities for students. We came out of that, out of COVID. Today, again, just fast forward, we're just at the 5th year anniversary, of course, of that. We've had over 35,000 students go through our first set of biology sequencing. We're seeing just amazing engagement in the exploration-based discovery, students working together to help save a species inside an alien zoo, which is a fantastical environment, spending more time on task, 10% on average, 10% improvement in grade outcome, and now expanding it from biology to chemistry to art history to earth and space science. And we actually created a company together, which is called Dreamscape Learn, and we offer this to folks around the world. And finally, we're just beginning, and maybe we'll get a chance to come back to this, just beginning our ASU journey when it comes to AI. And again, this is the moment. There are all kinds of headwinds, and ASU is actually, as before, trying to be intentional about where we could actually be better as we work our way through this moment.
Incredible 12-year journey. And it's no wonder that your team, your institution is ranked #1 in the country, perhaps the world, when it comes to innovation. Ellen, when you listen to Lev combine creativity and being deliberate and purpose-driven, ensuring everything they do enhances stakeholder success, starting with the students. I love how he passionately talks about students learning more and being more engaged. You've had an incredible, illustrious career in the intelligence community. What advice do you have now in this convergence of uncertainties, what political, economic, technological? We just talked about AI, in my opinion, electricity for the 21st century. What advice do you have for leaders as you listen to Lev and you've had your success, in terms of what leadership traits matter most when it comes to making sense of all this change and all this information and intelligence that's around us?
It's so funny. As an intel officer, you'd think that we would be thrilled with all the data that we're drowning in right now, but we're not. We're overwhelmed by all of it. So I love this question because, I think the intel analyst in me comes out, and I think there's sort of six sort of steps, 6 things I would think about as you're trying to succeed in this era of information overload. And I think the first is to question everything, but don't become a conspiracy theorist. Not all sources are created equal. Especially don't become a conspiracy theorist. But not all sources are created equal. Just because something is trending doesn't mean it's true. I think you want to take a pause, think about it, and actually think about, would I stake my career on this particular fact? And if you can answer that question, then that's one principle you probably want to apply. We're close to St. Patrick's Day. I'm Irish. I think I would mix your data input like a good cocktail. I think a single source is never enough. In the intelligence business, whether it's national security or whether it's for business, it gets better when you blend sources. So, look at open source data, look at expert opinions, and a bit of your gut instinct. And like any good cocktail, balance is really important. So too much of any one ingredient can ruin a really good drink. So, it's a little bit of each. I love on the AI side, Lev, I think AI is amazing, but I also think it is like a smart intern, a smart student intern. It's helpful, but it's not always right. So AI is great for helping you get through incredible heaps of data. When you're buried in it, it's amazing, but it's a tool. And at the end of the day, it's about applying human judgment. So use AI like you would use an intern. I know diversity is not a very popular topic right now. So I might say surround yourself with people who have different perspectives on things, because while that as a leader, that can be a huge management challenge, it's always easier to manage people who think alike. But what comes out of the time you put into managing people with diverse backgrounds and thoughts is absolutely a thing of beauty. So it's really important to surround yourself with people who think different. Simplicity wins. Okay, in the intelligence community, we are masters at sharing stuff that nobody freaking understands. Like I remember my time at NGA as a chief operating officer, and I'd get briefed on stuff, and I would sit there and I'd be like, "What are you talking about?" And I think that was part of what it was about. Is like they didn't want me to know what they were talking about, and so you've got to be. Simplicity is so important. If you can't explain what you're doing in one sentence or in one PowerPoint slide, you're done. And I think the last thing, and David, this is what I've learned from David Bray, especially, is to never forget the human factor. That data is incredibly powerful, but at the end of the day, intelligence is only as good as your understanding of people, their motives, their fears, their desires. So really, understanding the human side of this is almost more important than understanding the data, or certainly as important. So I think I would sum all this up with think critically, verify relentlessly, and never let technology do all the thinking for you.
Ellen, there's a book in you. I'm telling you that was a recipe that will serve all business leaders, government leaders. That was awesome. And I agree with you. We only hear what we understand. So please simplify. Before we move on, can you just tell us a little bit about Trust in Media Cooperative? Why did you start it, and what inspires you to go on this mission?
So I'm an Intel officer, an Intel analyst, and it really occurred to me, who's done this for quite some time, that our information ecosystem, it's broken. On the one hand, it's amazing because pretty much everything there you could ever need is there, but it's just very hard to get to it. The volume of information is just so overwhelming. And we've always lived in this time, by the way. Sensationalized information always spreads faster than fact-based information. That's just because we're human. But the technology is such that it just spreads faster than we can possibly process this. So, and so the reality is that they have, people just don't know what to believe anymore, and they don't have the tools to confidently assess something. And when I look at this, I see this really as a systemic failure. It's one that can't be fixed by fact-checking or content moderating. The way information moves today is just so much different than it's ever been before. And traditional approaches where institutions used to act as fact keepers. So during the era of yellow journalism, we'd create the New York Times, or we'd create journalistic standards, but all those gatekeepers don't work anymore because nobody trusts them. Nope. So I looked at this thing called the Trust in Media Cooperative. And by the way, David Bray has been very helpful in helping me get to this place. We're a nonprofit, a cooperative of media, technology, academic, other nonprofit organizations who are all focused on this concept of instead of telling somebody whether it's true or false, can we provide the frameworks, the tools, the understanding of what is actually quality information? Let people assess what is fact and what is fiction. I'm not going to tell you whether to trust something, but I believe like in making food choices, I know when to eat a Big Mac when I'm on the road, and I know when to eat organic chicken when I'm trying to lose that 5 pounds of weight. So give people the same agency to make those decisions for themselves. And I think that's where you're going to see change. So it's about giving people the ability, the agency to navigate the information ecosystem in a way that works for them, not having somebody else tell them what's true and what's not.
Your food and drink references are making me hungry and anxious.
I happen to love food and drink.
Hungry at this moment, yeah. So, but let's talk to Dr. David Bray. Look, you've been speaking about anything from AI and competitiveness. You've been active across all these sectors. You've been doing keynotes everywhere, podcasts on AI, healthcare, national security, and the future of the U.S. space industry. So tell me, what's going on? What are leaders trying to figure out that's pressing for the next rapidly changing world?
Well, thank you, Ray. And I would say, first, I feel like I'm with family, with both you and Vala, but also with Lev and Ellen, because I mean, you look at what each of you are doing, it's tackling the fact that we're in not just one type of revolution. I know everyone talks about an AI revolution, but we're in multiple revolutions. There's a revolution that's happening in quantum. Quantum's catching a lot of steam at the moment. But also, let's look at the fact that commercial space industry, we are now getting to 0.125 meter resolution, which is unprecedented from commercial space. You think about synthetic biology, that's sort of under the radar. It had its moment. It's still there. It's moving forward. Personalized medicine. And so there are multiple simultaneous revolutions happening. And usually when just one revolution happens, we talk about the Industrial Revolution, there's tremendous social and business upheaval. But we're doing 5 or 6 in parallel. And I think that's why, I love what Lev was saying, which is lean into the moment. Don't freak out about the moment, lean into the moment. This is another one of those moments. I think why it's particularly challenging, and this is what I try to tell business leaders, is we have super empowered people through the internet, through smartphones, through apps, including apps that give you access to commercial space technologies and now AI, to give you the capabilities that Ellen was talking about. I mean, circa the late 1970s is now in your pocket. You can geolocate anywhere in the world. You can call anyone at a moment's notice, hopefully, with their permission. You also have the ability to actually, do real-time imagery. I guarantee you, President Reagan, President Bush 41, President Clinton, and even President Bush 43 would have liked to have had your smartphone, in the Situation Room in the Executive Office of the President.
Wow.
And now there's 2 billion out of the 8.2 billion on the people of the planet with this capability. This gets to Ellen's point about who do we trust when everyone's got a mini KGB and CIA in their pocket? And then the next 1 billion people on the planet are going to get it in the next 5 years for only $100. And so this is tremendous upheaval. And the answer is not to go back to the way things were in the 1980s or 1970s. The answer is to try and figure out how do we do community-led, market-driven solutions to help us navigate what's next. And so that's why I love working with Ellen, because while Tim is a nonprofit, it is recognizing, one, you can't tell people what is truth or not. I mean, that's just not scalable and it takes away their agency. However, two, how do you then actually do community-led that are ultimately market-driven solutions from businesses? We won't name them, but I mean, there are some that actually could use the TIM protocols to make what they do and what they provide better. So this, I think, is really the compelling thing for the next 5 to 10 years. How do we educate not just students, but also current business leaders, current policymakers to say, you can't reach for those old levers that you used to. They won't work in this environment. You've got to have new levers and new strategies on how to lead that involve communities from the bottoms up, that involve decentralized approaches, and at the same time, work to pull people together underneath a big enough tent to move things forward.
So what are those important leadership traits? I want to expand on what Ellen talked about, the bottoms up approach. I believe the spark can come from a company or an individual, but for sustained momentum, the flames, the heat, the energy has to come from a community. So I gravitate towards anyone who thinks bottoms up, building consensus and purpose and core values. What do leaders need to condition themselves? What muscles do they need to develop in order to, foster a safe environment where when you talk about, you've been asked to talk about AI and national competitiveness. How do we do that from a bottoms up?
So Ellen, do you want to take that or do you want me to take it? You go first, Ellen, then I'll go after you.
So I think it really gets to this, it's actually just a basic leadership principle. So at the end of the day, I think leaders come in all styles, shapes, ages, and I think at the end of the day, a leader's job is to actually set a vision, make sure everybody's on board with it. And then your job is to equip everyone to be able to do it. It's not about doing it yourself. It's about their success and actually meeting these goals that you've actually set out. And so at the end of the day, I think the 3 things that you need to do as a good leader in this particular problem set that David has laid out, which is this concept of bottom up, building trust, getting folks on board with what is quality information, and then empowering them to go forward, is to educate, equip, and empower. It's to make sure they understand, where you're going, make sure they're on board with it, listen to them. To equip, your job as a leader is to make sure they have everything they need, the tools, the framework, whatever it is, and then let them go, empower them to go. And that's where change happens. And so I love the bottom up approach because it's small. And so if it works, the theory is if it works at a local level, for example, it will grow from there. So that's the vision I have for Tim and for virtually all of these revolutions we've been talking about.
Yeah, let's go to Lev real quick. What are you doing in terms of leading massive changes and as a leader, like, where do you see the role of AI both now and in the future at ASU?
And there's a little bit of pressure with Lev, I would say, because you're leading from the front. I'm telling you, I collaborate with CIOs in higher ed very regularly, and these folks will often say, "We're watching what ASU is going to do."
They are the market leader. You are leading.
So your point of view in terms of AI and how it's going to impact your campus, people are anxiously looking to you to help them figure out their investment thesis and their approach. So again, no pressure, Lev.
Well, I'll just share essentially the reality of what we live at ASU. And it turns out, not surprisingly, that's a bit of an and both rather than an either or when it comes to the way we approach these disruptive moments. I guess I would just simply say that as the organization, and in fact, that the institution has grown so significantly over the last 20 years, is in large measure because we do have a deep philosophical mindset, which is a growth mindset that is focused in on embracing disruption, not trying to necessarily only navigate it, as I've indicated previously, and really understanding that the key to any social organization that is significant in terms of size is being adaptive to the conditions that we face. And so specifically at this moment in time, around AI, we have almost 5,000 instructors, faculty at ASU. There's plenty of bottom up, and there's plenty of interesting petri dish activity that's going on. But at the same time, this is the and both part of it. The institution, from the president's office and the executive team, has embraced an intentionality that we are, as an institution, going to be leaning into yet again, and in particular at this moment, understanding even before sort of the most recent chapter of disruption over the last, let's say, couple of months, understanding a year and a half or two ago that the AI wasn't going to just change how we taught, which is where most of the debate is in education. And the truth is, in most industries, it's how will this change the way we do business? Actually, at ASU, our point of view is it'll also change what we teach. And if our job in the overall pipeline of human capital development in this country is to prepare folks for the next parts of their lives, whether they're young adults, older adults, or anywhere in between, is to make sure that they actually have the skills and the tools to participate in not a forthcoming AI era, but the one that's here that we know is unevenly distributed, but they're inheriting in a fashion. So it's incumbent on us as an educational institution to actually lead. Our actual leadership commitment is to actually prepare students in an intentional way. So that means new degrees, that means new pervasive tools for folks across all of the subjects, from humanities through to computer science. And it also means opening partnership relationships, not only with traditional technology companies, but understanding that in the public service community, we need to be able to prepare the public agencies of the future to be AI first agencies. We can debate how long that's going to take, but it's going to arrive, and probably sooner than we expect. So our incumbent on us to participate in actively and hopefully successfully positioning our students for an opportunity to participate in that reality going forward.
I love when you say AI first, companies, agencies, organization. It's to me critically important, and I recognize that my company's headquarters is in San Francisco. So when I'm in San Francisco, I often find myself in a way more self-driving cars, and when I get in it, it's unsettling because I don't see a steering wheel, I don't see brake and gas pedals, I don't see mirrors, and I'm like, the only way you would design a vehicle like this if it was an AI first design, because if it was a human design, you'd have a steering wheel, you'd have pedals.
Yep.
And so how do businesses let go of the steering wheel as they're designing the future? And I have a 22-year-old, 18-year-old, and 14-year-old. I can't imagine, and they're all studying different things. I'm 14-year-old still in high school, but 2 in college. I can't imagine my kids going for a job interview where they're not going to be asked, show us how you use AI. And there's no other technology. We weren't asked how to use cloud, how to use mobile, how to use social, how to use quantum, how to use Internet of Things or ledgers and blockchain. But I can't imagine, even a liberal arts student, not being asked. Certainly at my company, when we interview students, we ask, show us the tools you use. So it's so important that you used AI first and what we teach. Because as a father paying for 3 tuitions, 2 right now, 3, I want
to get your money
I
for
see
it.
a little self-interest there, dude.
100%, Ray. Hey, listen, your son graduating from Duke. You know what we have to do to help our children get out of these institutions. Let's just say I'm not going to retire for the next 20 years easily. Anyway,
working for a little bit.
really happy with how the way you frame your how you view technology for enablement, and not just how you do it, but what you teach. Sorry, Ray. I got excited listening to Lev. I think I need to convince my 14-year-old to go to ASU.
I was going to say, I think there's a campus visit in their future.
Absolutely. Happy to do it.
But hey, I mean, this is important, right? I mean, that level of disruption, the way leadership is going to be looking, we're going to expect even more disruptions, right? You've got everything from 9/11 to Afghanistan to change agents. Wait, that's you, David? What's going on? You're the FCC.
Yeah, I seem to go to places before they get disrupted for some reason, and then I'm present.
Yeah, where are you going next? Tell me more.
Well, I think it's sort of bringing together what both Ellen and Lev said, which is we are lacking creating a large enough narrative or big enough tent that people can see themselves in. And there's a very real risk that with all these technologies, we just become more isolated, we become more lonely, and it's like it's like what Ellen says, it's a lot easier when you hang out with people that all think the same thing, but you don't get the good outcomes. I mean, the whole point of free market is actually a difference of ideas, and you get better things as a result. I'm trying to bring that
escapism. Are we going to be a world of escapism now?
I hope not, but I do think that's why a lot of people are becoming rocket people for certain reasons, is that's the fantasy that somehow we can escape. And the reality is we can't. At the end of the day, we have to deal with what's in front of us, and we got to lean into it. And so, we've been here before. Ellen was mentioning there was the 1890s. There's been several times in the US's history where we've been challenged as to who are we. And I think we'll be able to figure out, and it's not just the United States, it's the entire world as a whole, thinking through, yes, AI is going to be part of it. I would say to Vala's comment, I think actually the job interview of 4 to 5 years from now is not going to be how to use AI. It's going to be what suite of AI agents are you bringing with you, because it's going to be plural, and you're going to have to explain how you're actually orchestrating all these different ones. And you may even put on your CV, I bring these 20 different agents that I've actually pruned and trained on my own data and everything like that as part of me. But anyway, and I raise that because I don't know if Ellen knows, about 16, 17 years ago when I was with the IC, I actually wrote a paper saying the future of the IC was intelligence analysts with their own bots, and they would actually work together with multiple bots. And I said that 17 years ago. I think that's going to be commonplace for everybody. But real quick, what I would say the biggest disruption right now, because Vala, you talked about how you feel strange when you're in that Waymo car, is I think for most people, they're feeling that on steroids about what's the future of my job? What's the future of my children's jobs? And what I celebrate, and why I really wanted to be here with Lev and Ellen, is they're tackling 2 of the key pillars, which is what's the future of education? And I think the future of education, we didn't really get into it, is we're all going to be going back to school one way or another, whether we're physically going back or not. But the idea that you go to school once and you're done, that's very quaint. But then the other thing is, how do you get good quality information? And you don't tell people what it is, you let them find it out for themselves. So Ellen's solving that. What we don't have here, and maybe a future episode, what is the future when we're all going to be working possibly different jobs, plural, and different jobs throughout a career? And so the idea, again, I think that's why a lot of people are feeling anxiety. They thought the deal was, I go to school once and I have a job that's the same job for the next 40 years. That's no longer the case. I'm angry. I'm upset.
You broke my social contract.
You broke the social contract, and we did. And the question is, who's going to put it back together? Because the reality is you can't look to government to put it back together because things have changed.
Right.
You can't, and a lot of businesses are like, well, we're here for maximizing shareholder value and ROI, but social contract doesn't really fit into that either. So the question is, where are those places? And that's where, again, I celebrate that we've been talking about both bottom up, but how do you create a big enough tent that people can feel less anxious and say, we'll get through this?
We were building to the Black Mirror roadmap.
No. Again, that's why I'm here, Ray. And that's why I'm glad you got, it's not just me. You've got Ellen, you got Lev.
Yeah, but fundamentally, like how we define work, like move an object of some size a certain distance, work was defined based on the effort. And you said your career, but based on experience. what does effort means when you have access to infinite computing and storage? What does it mean? What does experience mean when you could spend a lifetime becoming a Go grandmaster, chess grandmaster, and the system plays itself for 4 days and it's unbeaten now? So, how we define experience and effort, I just think it's incredibly important.
We gotta have an AI beat the other AI grand chess match.
Yeah,
Now we're talking about what's going on
machine scale intelligence. Yeah, that's a whole other topic. I just want to end with, I love being around people that are putting a dent in the universe, like you three, as Steve Jobs famously said. What are you most optimistic about as you think about the next 1 or 2 years and your role and your team's role and the projects you're researching and implementing? What brings joy? What puts that spring in your step? What are you most optimistic about?
Yeah, let's start with Ellen.
I love that question because everybody is so depressed right now, but there's really so many things to be excited about. Like I think Alzheimer's is going to have a cure here, maybe even this year.
Ooh.
I actually think the Commanders might go to the Super Bowl.
Oh,
whoa! My son has a bunch of Jaden Daniels rookie cards, so let's go.
I think it could happen, but I mean, at least in the area that I'm, and also the Lady Gamecocks are going to win the NCAA final this year too. So we'll keep with the sports stuff. I'm a South Carolina
big predictions, Ellen.
Yeah.
Wow.
But so there's a lot to be optimistic about. David knows as we talk about this because I think we're both optimists. But I think that looking at this whole information ecosystem stuff, I mean, I think the one good thing that's come out of it is people are aware they can't trust anything. So it doesn't matter who you are, whether you're one of our kids or you're one of our parents, they know they can't trust anything right now. So that's exciting. It used to be the gatekeepers, the one that would fix all this. So it was your government, it was the newspapers, it was the tech platforms, like they were going to fix this, but nobody likes them or trusts them anymore. So really what I'm excited about is that now that people are aware of this, there is this, I actually think we're at this incredibly ripe time in history when people are going to want to get re-engaged on this. And I don't know if it's going to be motivated by a single event. In the past, it was kinetic events. I hope that's not the case. But I think it's more just lifestyle events. We want to know where the fire is. We want to know where traffic is. We want to know what the Little League Baseball where the Little League Baseball is. We're tired of next door telling us this. Like, I think you're going to see over the next year people now being far more specific about what they need and want, which we just didn't have before. So,
cool. Well, hey, wait, this was a lightning round. So Lev, 30 seconds or less.
So I'm sorry. Yeah.
No problem. I mean, I am super excited. I think the next chapter we'll see a renaissance in one of those trust institutions that's right now under duress, and that's my industry, higher education. I see a renaissance coming. I see social mobility in the AI era being enabled by this reinvented and redesigned role for universities in helping to orchestrate the ways in which we as humans interact with machines in unprecedented ways, and at the same time afford us an opportunity to continue our journey as creative, as people who actually invent and discover alongside now our digital tutors.
Renaissance in education. Love it. Love it. Dr. Bray, bring it home.
So I'm optimist because it's always darkest before the dawn. And so in a past life, I was arguing for agile IT and agile development before the events of 9/11. And fortunately, we did so. Otherwise, we would have had to do 3 million environmental samples for anthrax by fax, as opposed to IT. I was on the ground in Afghanistan in 2009. I said, we shouldn't still be here. We should find more appropriate ways to deal with it. That took 14, 15 years to sort itself out. Then, as you know, Vala and Ray, I was at the FCC back in 2017. I said that bots were flooding the system. At the time, for whatever reason, nobody really wanted to address that, but now it's almost like commonplace that we're like, yeah, bots can flood information. And so I would say the thing that I'm optimistic about is we're getting through this epidemic of learned helplessness from the last 2 decades, where everyone said someone else is going to solve it. And what we're realizing now is we're the cavalry. Everybody is the cavalry. Everyone has a chance to seize this. And what I really want to do is community conversations with CEOs that say, yes, we want to make sure you get some profits. We want to make sure you get shareholder growth, everything like that. But we also want to figure out how you as a business can help with community efforts. And that's a hard conversation because they don't teach that in business schools. There's no textbook. But I'm hoping with future episodes of DisrupTV, we can make the case to business that they should care.
Let's do that.
Wow, that's great. Some great thoughts here. We're really excited. I mean, we're going to see a disruption, and I do agree. We're actually looking at massive disruptions, whether it's the world order, whether it's currency, whether it's healthcare, whether it's education here, as we're talking about, whether it's intelligence. So it's going to be a very interesting time to live. So we're here with Lev, Ellen, David, and more importantly, a great conversation that you're going to watch again after this. So thanks for being on the show. Happy Friday.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Talk about your mind being expanded, and it felt like we had a 5-minute conversation. That went by way too fast. We love to anchor our show with award-winning, best-selling, incredible authors and executives, and no exception here. Sabina Nawaz, author of You're the Boss, Become the Manager You Want to Be, and Others Need. Sabina is an elite executive coach who advises C-level executives and teams of Fortune 500 corporations, government agencies, nonprofits, academic institutions around the world. Sabina routinely gives speeches each year and teaches faculty at Northeastern and Drexel universities. During her 14-year tenure at Microsoft, Sabina went from managing software development teams to leading the company's executive development and succession planning efforts for 11,000 managers and nearly 1,000 executives, advising Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer directly. Ray, you and I would love to be fly on the wall when Sabina was coaching Steve and Bill. That would have that's awesome. Sabina has written for and have been featured in Harvard Business Review, Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Fast Company, all major media and news outlets. Welcome, Sabina, and congratulations on your book that came out just a week ago. You're the Boss. So thank you for joining us here on DisrupTV.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Vala and Ray, for having me.
We're really excited about having you here. And one of the things that you write about and you talk about is sometimes a manager is a superstar, and sometimes they crash and burn. There's a lot of things in common, a lot of things that are not. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. And you know what, Ray? It can be the exact same person who can be the superstar and the crash and burner, because that actually happened to me. And that is one of the main reasons I wrote You're the Boss. I was a lousy manager at Microsoft, but that's not how I started. When I first managed for the first 8 or 9 years, I was managing software development teams and often got the feedback that I was the best boss ever. I cared about people. I coached them. Those were great years. I was running management development and then took on all these other responsibilities, leadership development, succession planning. And the first day back from parental leave, my assistant calls me before I've even gotten to work. I'm just putting on lipstick for the first time in 5 months. Where are you? Steve expects you in 30 minutes. That would be the CEO of the company. And she's reading me the memo as I'm hitting warp speed. Where was that Waymo at that point to get there on time? And that set the pace of this really frantic time with no sleep, no peace, an infant at home. And I started to micromanage. I said, there'll be time for empathy later. These are big boys and girls. Let's get to work. I didn't have time to give detailed instructions, let alone repeat them. I was snippy. I was short. And in just a few months, I went from being best boss ever to worst boss ever.
Oh.
And that's really important to know, that there are no purely good bosses or bad bosses. They reside in all of us. And the way to think about that is that it's not power that corrupts, it's pressure that corrupts. All the pressures I was under brought out the worst in me. Now, that doesn't have to be the case. You can actually do things to offset that and bring out the best in you, because pressure is also good. It brings out our creativity and our juices if we recognize it and know how to harness it.
Such a great statement. It's not power, it's pressure that corrupts. And when you ask elite athletes at the professional level or any level, when they make the playoffs, and you talk to them about pressure, the best, the ones that have steel nerves will say, pressure is a privilege. You work your entire career and your life to be promoted, to be in a room with Steve and Bill and titans of the industry. But sometimes you don't recognize, and perhaps being promoted can be the riskiest time, as you noted, in your career, because that's when you're feeling the pressure because you've been given added responsibilities. This is playoffs for you. Talk to us about how do you thrive? How do you calibrate and center yourself and bring balance to your day when you are expected to deliver and the person that you're serving happens to be, at that time, I'm sure, one of the most important business leaders in the world at Microsoft.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love that phrase, pressure is a privilege, Vala. I'm going to steal that.
Yeah, please. Everything is borrowed. Everything is borrowed.
Exactly. That is so true. It's and I'm borrowing this phrase from somebody, which is, I don't have to, I get to.
Oh, yeah.
I get to do this. And even just saying that to yourself when you're waking up feeling overwhelmed might be an interesting way to think about it. But there are many ways to center yourself, to manage yourself, essentially. And to remember that the higher you get promoted, the more people you have to lean on. But you do need to do that mindfully.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things I ask people to do in promoted positions, and the higher they go, is to shut up. To actually use. So I know you're laughing, but I'm actually serious when I work with them. I say, here's a shut up exercise. And in the book, there are 4 steps to the shut up exercise. The first one, so simple to do, not going to take you extra time, but will take some self-management, is to be at least the third to speak. And see what comes up. Because so many CEOs I work with say, I would shut up if only anyone else spoke. It's always crickets. And I say, well, yeah, that's because you come in with the first draft. You're the first one to speak. Who in their right mind is going to say, boss, your idea is not a great idea?
This is great. Do you do workshops like this where you bring people in? Like what are the biggest, the reason I ask this is because, it's really about doing a lot of these things. You have to undo habits. And, when you talk about your point on this blank space, right? The power of blank space, how doing nothing can reset your mind and management skills. Like that's very hard to do. Like, how do you do nothing? Right?
Yes.
How do you get people in that mindset? Like I think like my biggest torture is like someone lock me up in a room and tell you to do nothing. And I'll be like, okay, you've had enough. I'll apologize now. Tell me what I need to do. So.
I remember being in my 20s when I first went on a business trip, and I was by myself, and I'm sitting in this restaurant going, I'm sitting here by myself. I don't have anybody to talk to. What do I do between now and when the meal is served? That was my first introduction to doing nothing. The concept of blank space. So just like shutting up is say nothing and sense more what's going around you. The first thing you can do when you're under pressure is actually do nothing. Our instinct is to do more. And you know what? That just feeds the beast even more. You're never going to wake up with a clean inbox or a magically erased to-do list. So do nothing, which is take 2 hours a week and unplug. No talking, no researching on the web, no reading. What? Yeah, I know. So going back to the basics. Now, like you, Ray, many people have a very hard time with this. In fact, somebody called me in a panic 2 hours before his blank space time. Like, really, you want me to do absolutely nothing? So you can get started with baby steps. You could bring crayons and paper and draw. You could bring that idea, that big idea that you keep wanting to get to, but never manage to in 10 minutes in between meetings, and doodle or mind map. You could go for a walk. So there are many ways to do nothing and many ways to enter into it. It's funny you mentioned workshops, Ray, because last week I just unveiled a brand new workshop from my book around pressure. Oh, cool. And here's another thing you can do, which is one of the ways we put pressure on ourselves in management positions is become what I call the sole provider. Oh. And that sole provider comes in various forms. The very common one is, this is an especially busy time of year. I'll take care of it for my team. My team is already burning out. And that's the caretaker. Or you could be the whack-a-mole champ who's just whacking down your to-do list every day, going to bed satisfied only to find all these moles popping up the next day again. You could be the flash, which is Speedy. I'm going to do it faster than I can explain it, so I'm going to do it myself. Of course, the problem is then you keep doing it yourself.
Yes,
You could
do.
be that straight A student who's debating whether this should be an M dash or an N dash. And that's happened. True story. Not me, somebody else. So how do you diagnose where you fall? It might be multiple of these sole providers. And what do you do instead?
This is great. It's super powerful feedback. And super hard to do for me, like to do nothing. You think you're doing that. Celtics and Lakers were playing a few days ago. Lakers were in town. My son and I are watching the game, and he asked me during the game about one of the players and the move or the sequence of plays, and I didn't respond. And he asked me again, and I didn't respond. So he's like, Dad, you're writing an article, aren't you? And he knows. And I told him there are times subconsciously I'll write a post, and then when I sit to type, it's written. I'm writing it.
Yes.
So he's like, watch the game, stop writing an article. And I'm like, and the funny thing is he was right. I was totally right. A ZDNet post in my head. But to me, it was like, oh, okay, I'm in my blank space. I'm not thinking work, or I'm not thinking research. I was totally not tuning into the game.
Yes.
And I also so I lived that what you just said. And then you talk about habits in your book, and to do. I've always said to myself, and unsolicited advice to my kids, in order to get to your to-do list, you need a to-don't list.
Yes.
But so you talk about a need for a yes list to build habits and recalibrate your thoughts and processes, create sustained results. You need a yes list. Talk to us about the yes list, and at the same time, expand our minds in terms of there may be a no list you have to keep as well, so that you can stay focused.
Well, a no list could be part of your yes list. Let's dig into that. And it's so funny you mentioned habits, Vala, because the minute you talked about this game and your head was in the article, which I do as well all the time, and instead of at the game and with your son, I like to say I have a meditation practice. And you know what my meditation practice on many days is? 1 inhale and 1 exhale. That's it. And I give myself credit for having a meditation practice.
Wow.
So often, yes. So, hey, why not? That's
awesome.
I need your one yoga practice, because people keep asking me or encouraging me to do yoga, and I'm like, come on, I'm so inflexible and not stretching.
I fall asleep on yoga. I don't know. I can't. I lose it.
Please,
this is exactly why you need a yes list. The yes list is composed of things called micro habits. Micro habits are things that have 2 components. One, they're micro. In other words, they're so tiny, they're so ridiculously small that you would laugh, like my meditation practice. And the reason I mentioned meditation, by the way, Vala, was one way to get present to doing nothing again is to just check in with your body. So if you start to breathe, it's harder to then compose that article in your head and just get physical. The second component of a micro habit is you do it every single day. Now, I am much more I don't know about you, but I'm much more likely to do something tomorrow if I felt successful in it today. Sure. And if I said, oh, I meditated yesterday, it only took 1 breath. Great, I can do that again tomorrow. Now, let's be clear. There are days I actually meditate for an hour, but I give myself the gold star for one breath in and 1 breath out.
I love that.
So with a yes list, what you're doing is creating 3 to 5 really teeny tiny micro habits. If it's about your mental well-being, like me, you could have that 1 inhale, exhale. If, I'm training for a marathon right now, and I was a wannabe runner for 20 years.
Wow.
And when I started 3 years ago, it was simply increasing my running by 0.1 miles. That much, that small. And yes, and Ray, that reaction, I was laughing at myself like, oh, God, am I going to track this? This seems so ridiculous. Guess what? After 20 years, I've done 3 half marathons, and now I can get to the marathon.
That's amazing.
So your yes list has these small items. And at the end of the day, while you're brushing your teeth or something else, you take 20 seconds and check off. Yes, yes, yes. So your no piece could be, I said no to something today. And that's a yes. You get a check mark for that. When research shows that when we track things, we are much more likely to habituate them. We're much more likely to succeed in them. So, but the idea being, yes list is so simple. It's like less than a minute to do that you will actually do it.
Let's expand that for me, just if you could quickly. What would be 2 or 3 things that are yes list items for good leaders, good bosses, managers that we want to follow? What would be 1 or 2 or 3?
Well, communication is the biggest chapter in my book. And so I would say pick a communication practice. It might be, I used my shut up muscle today.
Okay.
I was the third to speak in one meeting.
Yeah.
Not more than that, just very small. It could be, I paraphrase somebody. I had somebody who would take their phone and turn off notifications, put it face down for 1 minute in one meeting a day. That's it. Now, over time, that has expanded and they're radically present at this point, and it has had amazing results. So something around communication would be a very helpful one.
Wow.
To put in your yes list.
I love that. I love that.
Well, we're so glad to have you here, and maybe we'll invite you to something else in the future, especially when you get a bunch of leaders that are emerging, that are looking at themselves, getting a little more self-aware. I think there's a lot to learn here. So fresh off the presses, you can catch Sabina, and you're the boss. Become the manager you want to be and others need. So you can follow her on X at Sabina Nawaz. And more importantly, get her book. It is out on Amazon right now.
Came out last week. Congrats. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Terrific. Thank you, Sabina.
Wow.
Ray, I don't know if I can handle 4 billion people in an episode. I tell you, I'm going to be watching this episode this weekend because, Ellen, Lev, David, and Sabina just dropped so many wisdom nuggets. Do us a favor. Give us a 20-second recap, 30-second recap of the episode.
Oh my God, that's really hard. But hey, what's going on right now is the future is changing. Lev talked about how education is going to be disrupted in the way we actually learn. That's going to continue to change. We got a little bit from Ellen trying to think about where intelligence is going, and more importantly, what's important to figure out insights and dealing with information deluge, which was crazy. And David's been telling us a little bit about what's happening next, especially when we look at, where the U.S. is going to be, what nation states are going to do, and of course, what that means for public and private sector, let's say, collaboration more than anything else. And of course, we can learn to be better managers. And I think these are tips that are pretty much honed from some of the best leaders in the world, now available to you, democratized on Amazon. So
via DisrupTV. I think the name of our show is more important now than perhaps at any time during our 10-year podcasting journey. Lots of disruption opportunities and challenges, and perfect time for reinvention. Next week, talk about 2 trailblazers, 2 disruptive innovators, thinkers, researchers, trusted advisors. Crawford Del Pret, who's president of IDC. I think he was episode 2 or 3 on our show. So one of the incredible early pioneers who helped launch our podcast. And perhaps one of the most trusted advisors to the show, Govinda Singh, who's the chief marketing officer of Persistent Systems. Ray and I often collaborate with Govinda in terms of the shape of the narrative of our show and the guests we want to bring on the show. He's an avid collaborator and an advocate of our show, and he happens to be one of the top CMOs in the world. So Crawford Del Pret, Govinda Singh will be here for episode 392 next Friday. If it's Friday, it's DisrupTV. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to connecting next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.